Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank everybody on YouTube. And as always, if you have any questions or comments you'd like to bring up, don't hesitate to email us at buddhapracticestudy@gmail.com. So thank you all. So we're about to start chapter 26, which is a long chapter. Um, It has 242 verses, but they do go quickly. And what we've done is broken them down into recitations, actually 15 different recitations, where we have a chance to recite that particular grouping and then have a short discussion about it and then carry on to the next recitation. And it may take us a couple of 3 weeks, depending on our conversation, but you know that the discussions we have are the best part of our meetings. So everybody looks forward to them. Everybody comments how much they appreciate the discussions that we have. So we love engaging in that. Does anybody have any comments or questions about anything that we've talked about thus far? Chapter 25 or any other chapter right now? Okay. Well, then I'd like to make just a couple comments before we get started with this. And I'd like to say that one of the things that's highlighted in this chapter is in the Sanskrit word Shila, Shila. And Shila is the behavioral discipline, is the virtue, is the morality, is the ethics in which we engage in the Dharma. What the Dharma is there to help us to develop Shila, proper Shila, and so on. So that's a theme that runs through this. Another thing is the thus gone one is the victorious one, who is Buddha Shakyamuni, is talking to his 5 friends who had gone to the caves with him beforehand, and now they've met up with him in Sarnath outside of Varanasi in India. And this is where this conversation picks up with him teaching. This becomes his first monastic teachings, that he's teaching the Four Noble Truths. So the basic question that's being answered here throughout all of this chapter, is by what authority does the thus gone one speak? What is his authority to say this? So it's by the authority that is contained in this chapter. So if you have any question about, well, how can he do this? And others might come up and say, how can he do this? How can he say these things? Well, in this chapter, it's encapsulated. So it's an important part of what it is to be a Buddhist. So if we can, let's make a list. So if we can start off, Kunga, if you'll start off by reading 26.1 through 26.6. That's the first recitation that we're going to talk about. And I've made the designation of these recitations, so it's not something that's written in the book. So Kunga, if you'll start with that, and then let's go through that, and then I'll ask somebody else to read after that. So Kunga, when you're ready, please begin with the title and carry on.
Chapter 26, Turning the Wheel of Dharma. Monks, at that point, the thus gone one had accomplished everything he had to do. With nothing more to achieve, all of his fetters had been cut. All negative emotions had been cleared away, along with his mental stains. He had conquered Mara and all hostile forces, and now he joined the Dharma way of all awakened ones. He had become omniscient and perceived everything. He possessed the 10 powers and had discovered the fourfold fearlessness. All the 18 unique qualities of a Buddha had unfolded within him, Equipped with a fivefold vision, he surveyed the entire world with the unobscured eye of an awakened one, and began to reflect. To whom should I teach this Dharma for the very first time? Who is pure, kind-hearted, easy to train, and a good teacher, able to purify others? Who has little desire, anger, and delusion? Who is open-minded and suffers because of never having heard the Dharma? Such a person I should teach first of all. One who understands my teachings will not turn against me. Then monks, the thus gone one thought to himself, Rudraka, the son of Rama, is pure and kind-hearted. It is easy for him to make others understand and purify them. He has only little desire, anger, or delusion. He is also open-minded and now suffers because he has never heard the Dharma. He instructs his students in the practice of disciplined conduct that leads to a state of mind that is neither conscious nor unconscious. Now, where is he staying? At that moment, the thus gone one realized that Rudraka had died just 1 week before. The gods too bowed their heads to the thus gone one's feet and said, Lord, this is how it is, well gone one. This is how it is. Rudraka, the son of Rama, died just 1 week ago. Monks, at that point I had the thought, oh no, how sad that Rudraka, the son of Rama, died before hearing the well-prepared teaching. If only he had received my teaching, he would surely have understood it. To him I would have explained this Dharma for the first time, and he would not have turned against me. Monks, the thus gone one again thought, now where could there be another being who is pure and easy to train, who would have all these qualities and not react against the teaching of the Dharma? Monks, it then occurred to the thus gone one, Arada Kalama is pure and has all the other qualities. He would not react against the teachings of the Dharma. So the thus gone one wondered, where would he be now? Wondering, he realized that Arada Kalama had passed away just 3 days earlier. The gods from the pure realms clarified that matter for the thus gone one, saying, Lord, that is how it is, well gone one, that is how it is. Arada Kalama died just 3 days ago. The thus gone one then thought, oh no, how sad that Arada Kalama died before hearing this well-prepared teaching.
Okay, thank you. So does anybody have any comments about this, about who these two disciples that the thus gone one is about to teach and find out that they're gone? Well, the first one was the son of one of his teachers when he first became an ascetic, when he went first into the forest. Rudraka was the son of Rama. I think that's right. Rudraka, the son of Rama, is pure and kind-hearted, is what he says. I'm not so sure about the second Arada Kalama. Bernie, do you have anything to add about
No,
that?
these two guys were Buddha's teachers before he decided to go full ascetic. He-
They were both his teachers.
They were both his teachers, and they both taught him the different stages of jhana, Rudraka, Ramaputra, and Arada Kalama. So seems I was just thinking maybe I've been watching too many murder mysteries on TV, but it sounds awfully suspicious they died just 1 week before he became enlightened. I'd file a police report or something if it was me, but it's just the way it happened. I guess that's karma.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments about this? I just want to point out then that in the first stanza, in the first verse, and in the second verse or third verse, there are references to the 10 powers, to the fourfold fearlessness, to the 18 unique qualities, and to the fivefold vision. And you can refer to these in our glossary. If you need refreshing, what these mean and everything. This gives us opportunity to recall, the things that we've been talking about before and understand how the thus gone one, Shakyamuni Buddha now, has become the embodiment of these things. So it's very good to be able to refresh our memory and maybe rekindle some of that within ourselves. Okay, so if nobody else has any other thoughts right now, then we'll continue with the second recitation, which goes from 26.7 through 26.16. So, Zara, can I ask you, please, to recite 26.7 through 26.26, please?
Yeah, so 26:7 to 26.26, so 19 verses, is that correct?
16, right?
Is that right?
Good arithmetic.
Oh, I just want to make sure you wanted me to cover that chunk before we stopped. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yes, I can. All right. Monks, at that point, the thus gone one was once again reflected. What other being is pure, has a good heart, and all the qualities, and will not react against my presentation of the Dharma? Monks, it then occurred to the thus gone one, my 5 aesthetic companions are pure and good-hearted. They will make good teachers who are able to purify others. They have but little desire, anger, delusion. They would be open-minded, and they are now suffering because of not having heard the Dharma. When I was practicing under hardships, they helped me. They will understand the Dharma taught by me, and they will not turn against me. Monks, at the point thus gone one decided, my 5 aesthetic companions will be the ones to whom I shall teach the Dharma for the first time. Monks, the thus gone one now further thought, where might these 5 companions be staying? Scanning the entire world with his eye of an awakened one, he saw the 5 ascetics staying in the deer park in Varanasi, by a hill known as the Hill of Fallen Sages. After seeing this, he thought to himself, if I teach these 5 excellent ascetics the Dharma before I teach anyone else, they will understand my Dharma when I teach it for the very first time. Why is that? Monks, they have already practiced and they already possess pure qualities of accomplished scholars. They are intent on the path to liberation and are free from obstructing forces. Now monks, having reflected in this way, the thus gone one arose from the seat of awakening, making the trichocosm tremble. In due course, passing through the country of Magadha, he set off on his way to Kasi and Gaya, not far from the seat of awakening. And Ajivika medicine spotted him from afar. Seeing the thus gone one approaching, he came up to him and stood to one side. As he stood to one side, monks, the Ajivaka first made a pleasing conversation about various things with the thus gone one, saying, Venerable Gautama, your senses are calm, and your skin is bright, pure, and of yellow hue. Just as the autumn season, which is white and bright, becomes of yellow hue, so too your senses, Lord Gautama, are bright, and your round face is perfectly pure. Just as when the ripe fruit of the tala tree is ripped off its stem, the severed area immediately becomes yellow, bright, and perfectly pure, so too, Gautama, are your bright senses and your perfectly pure round face. Just as a necklace made of gold from the Jambu River, whose surface has the excellence of a shining meteor, when well fashioned by a skillful son of a goldsmith and thrown into a white cloth, becomes of a vivid color, resplendent, perfectly pure, and exceedingly bright. Just so, Venerable Gautama, are your calm senses, bright skin color, and your perfectly pure round face. Venerable Gautama, with whom did you practice religion? Monks, the thus gone one replied to Ajivaka with this verse, I do not have any teacher. There is no one like me. I alone am the perfect Buddha, cool and without any flaws. The seeker then asked, Gautama, surely you are not telling me that you have become a worthy one. The thus gone one replied, I am the worthy one of the world. I am the unsurpassed teacher. Among the gods, demigods, and divine spirits, there is no rival to me. The seeker asked further, Gautama, surely you are not telling me that you have become a victorious one. The thus gone one replied, the victorious ones should be known to be like me, who has exhausted all faults. I have conquered all evil dharmas. Therefore, my friend, I am indeed a victorious one. The medicant then asked, Venerable Gautama, where will you go now? The thus gone one replied, I am on my way to Varanasi. When I arrive in the city of Kasi, I shall spread an incomparable light to shine in this world of the blind. I am on my way to Varanasi. When I arrive in the city of Kasi, I shall beat the great drum of nectar to be heard in the world of the deaf. I am on my way to Varanasi. When I arrive in the city of Kasi, I shall turn the wheel of Dharma. This has never been turned in this world. May this come to pass, Gautama, replied the Ajivaka. May this come to pass. The medicinant then took off toward to the south, while the thus gone went north. Monks, at this point.
Thank you.
Oh, 2-6 or 1-6?
My bad. Yeah. Stop here, please. I
Okay.
said 2-6, but no, stop here. Thank you. So any comments? Anybody have any comments? Any observations about this section? This conversation that he was having with Ashijati?
Well, I was just looking it up online, but the Ajivaka seems to be a philosophy of Hinduism that's been lost currently. They don't have any scriptures left, but they believed that everything in life was predetermined by fate, and your whatever happened to you was predestined. So they were against the law of karma.
Yes, and if you look up in the glossary, it refers that Ajivika Ajivika is the fatalistic movement of eternalism. So that's what you were saying, Bernie,
Yeah.
in different words. The fatalistic movement of eternalism. So it's like overcoming eternalism.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess they're they consider an eternalist theory, but from here they emphasize the fact that they were fatalists. They didn't believe in free will at all. So, or your deeds, what or the consequences of your deeds resulted in karma.
So would this have this predated Hinduism?
It was well, there were many schools in Hinduism. Hinduism isn't just one philosophy. It's a various set of philosophies that all developed in India, and this was just one of them. People, from my modern standpoint, I would just call them materialists. People who believe that everything is predetermined. There's nothing you can do, and everything is just made out of matter. So
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that fatalism is and in eternalism, I think it's that everything will be fine, or that everything will turn into a hellish existence. That you're bound to do that. That's bound to happen. But nevertheless, that's something to think about. Um, the I thought it was interesting that in 26.8 are why the five companions, why are they worthy for these teachings? And what makes it relevant is what makes us worthy to be able to study these sutras, to be able to study these teachings and so on, and to be able to have these discussions. Is there not some resonance with what's being said here for these five disciples? Have we not, come to a point of being able to be worthy to be able to do this?
Is that a question or is that an observation?
It's an observation. Does anybody have any comments on it?
Well, in the previous chapter, he talked about the group of people in the middle, right, that would benefit the most from access to the Dharma. So maybe that's us, the lay people, right? Like us right now in this century.
Okay. And one thing that's kind of is a difference between us as lay people and who these people are. These five friends were considered to be monastics, ascetics, people who had taken vows and so on, where the lay people at that particular point may not have taken those vows. So there was this. I'm
Lance, at
sorry.
that, I was going to just clarify at that time because I do understand his friends, like their journey, the aesthetics with him, that they had been with him for a while. How many people really were taking that up, like the monastic lifestyle during that time, though? Like, where was it mostly just lay people and then a small subset were aesthetic or monastic?
Well, I certainly don't know. I can only guess that there were some who went as ascetics and went into the woods, but then there are some who remained, within the kingly palaces and so on as the religious leaders of what was the Hinduism and other traditions at the time. So priests, or maybe ordained of one way or another, something like that. So I guess there was a difference there.
I was more curious, like, how many people he really had to choose from, right? Like, when he was thinking about it, like, we're counting it initially, like, when he was going through, it wouldn't have come to him to think it should go to a layperson first, anyways, probably. I wonder if his just like selection pool is what I mean.
Yep, I don't know.
I don't know, just an idea, but it doesn't necessarily matter either.
So the question and answer between Gautama and Aji Kita that goes on, between 26.11 and 26.16. It's just interesting to be able to be like, the eavesdropper on hearing this conversation and so on. So then it says here the last part of the stanza, it says, "May this come to pass, Gautama," saying that Gautama is saying, that he will bring all this to the world and so on like that. And Ajivika says, "Well, may this come to pass," and then he goes off towards the south while the thus gone one goes north. So there's a splitting of the ways. And if we go back to what Bernie was referring to earlier, that here was the traditionalist of eternalism or whatever, going back to his way, saying, "Oh, well, I hope this comes to pass on your side." But meanwhile, they're splitting in two different directions. It wasn't like he was following them, in other words. Okay. So let's carry on unless somebody else has another comment, another observation. So,
Uh,
yes.
Lance, I'll just briefly say that Bernie, that breaks my heart that the Ajivika, whatever scriptures they had are lost. Talk about a crime against humanity. That's I would like to read them, but we can't apparently. That's
Well,
sad.
in India, it's not like Egypt. Weather conditions are not too conducive to preserving manuscripts. So actually, most Buddhist manuscripts that we still have come from Pakistan, which is much drier, and so the scriptures preserved that much longer. So yeah, we've lost a lot. I mean, I think that's estimated that we only have 10% of what the Greeks wrote back in the classical era of the Romans and the Greeks. So we've lost a lot of history going down, and it's not surprising. That includes a lot of Indian literature as well.
Thank you. My question, Lance, is that you had mentioned this belief that things are going to go badly, that eventually everything goes terrible. And I forget what context you mentioned that in, but my question is, if like I was listening to Bob Thurman recently, and he's convinced that everything's going to be okay in the end, that everything's going to be fine, that everybody's going to embrace the Dharma. I hope I'm not misunderstanding or misquoting him, but that ultimately things are going to be okay. But when I look at human history, things are very often not okay. So can you clarify what is the Buddhist teaching about, do we believe that in the end everything's going to be fine and we're all going to become enlightened?
Well, my observation, what I was commenting, that eternalism is that there will be this eternal heaven and you'll be forgiven of all your sins, or there's this eternal hell and you will be continually suffering for eternity in that situation. So there's this sense of eternity on either side.
Got it. Sounds like Christianity.
Yes. So, Brendan, will you read the next sections, please? So this time I'll try and be more accurate. So
Can we
26 point.
Lance, maybe you should clarify that sort of came off as if that the Buddha wasn't teaching that though. The Buddha wasn't teaching eternalism. I guess
No.
that we should make that clear.
Yes, thank you. And that's how he was breaking through from what Ajita Kita was talking about. He was the eternalist. Is that correct? Do you read it that way? That he was the eternalist, but then the thus gone one was moving in another direction away from that,
So I think that Brendan's question was about what was that direction? How would you describe that direction?
away from eternalism, into the middle way, developing into the middle way.
Well, in Buddhism, the general belief is that all sentient, in the very, very long term, that all sentient beings will attain enlightenment, I suppose. But until that time, there are ups and downs, and history is very cyclic, and there are times when things are getting better and times when it's getting worse. And at our current epoch, things are gradually getting worse. And one day the Dharma will be lost. So it gets weaker and weaker as we get further and further away from the lifetime of the Buddha. So in that sense, it's rather pessimistic in the short term, but of course, in the longer term, there will be other enlightened teachers that come along, like Maitreya.
Kunga, you have any comment about any of that?
So since it's everything's impermanent, but nothing really disappears, eventually we're bound to all be enlightened. That's my comment.
But then it gets into the question of if time's beginningless, how could there be a direction of time in which we're not enlightened now, but enlightened in the future? It's an interesting question too. It's probably getting away from anything practical in our lives, but it's something that's, I don't know.
Well, I think the
Well, no,
Buddhist point of view is everybody has the capacity for enlightenment. So sooner or later, you're bound to come onto the path. And once you get onto the path uh, of enlightenment, then it becomes more or less inevitable, even though it may take a very long time.
Yeah, I guess the point is if we're not positing a beginning of time, then
Well, if there's, okay,
then we couldn't be. I mean, all of this is dualistic, conceptual stuff, so it
well,
doesn't. I mean, it's
okay.
none of it is really the truth anyway. But
Well, that this is part of the paradoxes of infinity.
right,
An
that's
infinite
right.
number of beings can become enlightened, but there can still be an infinite number of beings who aren't enlightened. It's like the number of, we have an infinite number of even numbers, but we have an infinite number of numbers which are odd as well. So it's one of the paradoxes of infinity, if the universe is infinite.
yeah, well, I think I agree with what both Bernie and Matt were just saying, in sense of in terms of that time itself is a relative, and that you know our experience with enlightenment is relative to our life now. It's not relative to our life later on in other existences and other manifestations and so on. So this finiteness of saying, well, at some point, the Dharma is going to disappear. Well, it may disappear within me, but to be able to say that it's going to disappear for everybody that to me is a bit of a stretch. It may be true, but I'm only interested, directly with what happens to me and how I can help other beings and so on for them not to lose it. So I look at this whole time element of as being just a relative thing, and that we can achieve enlightenment at any time in this lifetime. And if there is another lifetime, that perhaps we manifest, but as a different person. We're not the same person. It's not the same. It's not the same combination. It's not the same heap. It's not the same set of skandhas and so on. So I don't know if I'm making myself clear or not, but I'm just stressing the point that it's relative. That we're thinking in terms of relativity here. We're talking in terms of relativity here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So Brendan, if you will read from 26:17, then to 26.27. Or you through 26:27. So it's a couple of pages there. Is that okay for you?
That's fine.
All right, please.
Monks, at this point, Sudarsana, the king of the Nagas, invited the thus gone one to stay with him in Gaya for some refreshments. The thus gone one then proceeded to Rohitavastu and on toward Uruvela Kalpa, Anala, and the town of Sarathi. Monks in all those places, the lay people invited the thus gone one to stay and refresh himself. In due course, he arrived at the banks of the great river Ganges. Monks at that time, the great river Ganges was swollen and flowed on the same level as its banks. Now, monks, since the thus gone one wanted to cross the river, he approached a ferryman about this. The ferryman told him, Gautama, you must pay the crossing fee. The thus gone one replied, Sir, I do not have any means to pay the crossing fee. Then he flew through the air from one shore to the other. When the boatman saw this, he felt great regret, thinking, oh no, how sad. How could I refuse to give a ferry ride to such a venerable man worthy of being served? He then fainted and fell to the ground. Later, the boatman recounted the story to King Bimbisara. Your Majesty, when I asked the mendicant Gautama to pay the crossing fee, he told me that he did not have the money to pay the fare. Instead, he just flew through the air from one bank to the other. When King Bimbisara heard this, he waived the crossing fee for monks from that day onward. Monks in this way, the thus gone one traveled through the land. Finally, he arrived at the city of Varanasi. At dawn, he dressed, put on his mendicant robe, and took his alms bowl. Then he entered the city of Varanasi to seek alms. Soon he had acquired enough offerings and sat down for his meal. He then proceeded to the deer park by Hill of the Fallen Sages to meet his 5 former companions. The 5 companions could see the thus gone one approaching from a distance, and they began to scheme. Venerable ones, look, here comes the mendicant Gautama, that lazy, gluttonous one who has given up on his ascetic practices. Before, when he practiced austerities, he never managed to manifest any deep wisdom derived from the teachings of superior humans. How much worse are things now? He is not to be emulated as he walks around eating proper food and doing easy practices. That lazy glutton. None of us should approach him to greet him or rise when he comes. Don't help him by holding his robes or his offering bowl. Don't offer him food or drink for refreshment, nor a place to rest his legs. We can, however, set up some spare seats and say, Venerable Gautama, these are spare seats. If you like, you may sit. The venerable Ajnatakandinya did not agree with this, but he did not voice his opposition either. Monks, the closer the thus gone one came to his 5 former companions, the more comfortable they felt in their seats and wanted to stand up. They felt like birds caught in a cage with a fire burning below. Just as birds tormented by a fire wish nothing more than to take off quickly and fly away, the closer the thus gone one came to the 5 companions, the more uncomfortable they felt in their seats and wanted to get up. The reason they felt this way is that no living being is able to remain seated when beholding the thus gone one. So the closer the thus gone one came to the 5 companions, the more overwhelming his splendor and radiance became. They began to quiver in their seats, and then their prior plan fell apart completely, and they all stood up from their seats. One went to greet him, one approached him and held his robe and alms bowl, one prepared a seat for him, one made a footrest, one brought water to wash his feet, and said, "Welcome, Venerable Gautama, welcome, Venerable Gautama. Please sit on this seat that we have laid out." Monks, the thus gone one indeed sat on the seat that had been arranged, and the 5 companions who tried to make diverse, happy, and pleasing conversation with the thus gone one sat a little apart. They spoke to the thus gone one in the same way the Ajivika had addressed him earlier. "Venerable Gautama, your senses are calm and your skin is bright, pure, and of yellow hue. Just as the autumn season, which is white and bright, becomes of yellow hue, so too your senses, Lord Gautama, are bright and your round face is perfectly pure. Just as when the ripe fruit of the tala tree is nipped off its stem, the severed area immediately becomes yellow, bright, and perfectly pure, so too, Gautama, are your bright senses and your perfectly pure round face. Just as a necklace made of gold from the Jambu River, whose surface has the excellence of a shining meteor, when well fashioned by a skillful son of a goldsmith and thrown onto a white cloth, becomes a vivid color, resplendent, perfectly pure, and exceedingly bright. Just so, Venerable Gautama, are your calm senses, bright skin color, and your perfectly pure round face. Venerable Gautama, with whom did you practice religion?" The thus gone one answered the 5 companions, "Monks, do not address the thus gone one as venerable, meaning long-lived, or you will have failure, adversity, and unhappiness for a long time. Monks, I have actualized immortality and the path that leads to immortality. Monks, I am the awakened one, the omniscient one, the all-seeing one. I have become tranquil and have exhausted all faults. Monks, being the master of phenomena, I will teach you the Dharma. Come, listen and understand. Listen intently with open ears, and I will give you instruction and guidance. When I teach and guide you, you will also relinquish all faults and be liberated within a stainless and insightful state of mind. When you attain realization, you will proclaim, our births have been exhausted, the religious life has been led, that which ought to be done has been done, and nothing else. We therefore know an existence different from this ordinary life. Did you not, monks, earlier say to yourselves, venerable ones, look, here comes that mendicant Gautama, that lazy, gluttonous one who has given up on his ascetic practices. Before, when he practiced austerities, he never managed to manifest any deep wisdom derived from the teachings of superior humans. How much worse are things now? He is not to be emulated as he walks around eating proper food and doing easy practices. That lazy glutton. None of us should approach him to greet him or rise when he comes. Don't help him by holding his robes or his offering bowl. Don't offer him food or drink for refreshment nor a place to rest his legs. We can, however, set up some spare seats and say, Venerable Gautama, these are spare seats. If you like, you may sit. Monks, as soon as the thus gone one had uttered these words, every extremist symbol and banner that the 5 companions were wearing disappeared in an instant. Instead, they each now found themselves dressed in the 3 robes of a mendicant with an alms bowl and their head shaven. Even their behavior was as if they had already been ordained for 100 years. This truly was their going forth. This very ordination became the essence of monkhood. Monks, right away, the 5 monks bowed at the thus gone one's feet and confessed their wrong behavior. In the thus gone one's presence, they developed their recognition of him as their teacher, as well as their love, devotion, and respect for him. Out of devotion, they then gave the thus gone one a refreshing and cleansing bath in a lotus pond with lotuses of many different colors. Monks, after the thus gone one had refreshed by his bath, he thought to himself, Where did all the previous thus gone ones, the worthy ones, the perfect Buddhas, turn the wheel of Dharma? Monks, at whichever place the previous thus gone ones, the worthy ones, turn the wheel of Dharma, at that place there appeared 1,000 jewel thrones, made of 7 kinds of jewels. Then the thus gone one, out of respect to the thus gone ones of the past, circumambulated the first 3 thrones, and then sat down cross-legged on the 4th throne like a fearless lion. The 5 monks prostrated to the thus gone one with their heads at his feet, and then sat down before him.
Thank you.
Well,
So any comments about this right now?
can I comment, Lance, on the Buddha flying?
Sure.
My Western dualistic mind says, are you kidding me? But, I mean, it's possible. And, the Buddha was not just a great philosopher like Schopenhauer or something. He was more than that. And I like hearing stories of the supernatural abilities of the Buddha. I think that's an amazing thing. And I think that should be embraced. And that's not something that we should necessarily scoff at. So that was just my initial reaction to that. And the other thing I wanted to mention was this beautiful where the 5 monks bowed at the thus gone one's feet and confessed their wrong behavior, and they became, oh yes, they received their alms bowls. And whenever I think of alms bowls, I think of this book I was reading. It's fiction, kind of Buddhist fiction based in Thailand, and there's a term in Thailand for foreigners, usually middle-aged men like me, and they're called Therang. That's the Thai term for them. And at one point, one of the characters said, I've never met a Therang that was at peace. I've never met a Therang that was happy. And I think it's because we're so consumed in the West with money and building up our 401ks and am I safe now? Can I retire in 10 years? And we're never really safe. We do all these things to try to pretend that we're safe, but the monks have it right. They're dependent on what is put on their alms bowl so they can eat. And what a tremendous way to liberate from all that fear and all that preparation to try to somehow make yourself safe, as we do in the West, because the guy that saved and never did anything until he was 65 and finally retired and dropped dead a month later. So I'll stop rambling. That's my exegesis.
No, that's fine. Very good. So the point of his flying and the point of their transforming their clothing and everything and kind of instantly, it seemed, magically, wearing robes and so on. You don't see that as metaphor. You see that as real events.
Well, I'm with Kunga, as he said a few weeks ago. I don't know. So thank you for that, Kunga. Very profound. About a similar question. That was his response. I don't know. So I'm going to go with Kunga on that. But I will say it's possible. I don't know. But if it's true, how beautiful. So I don't dismiss that out of hand. I think that's more my commentary on that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. It's a good answer. The image after the monks turn, or rather the 5 disciples give up their clothes and transform into robes and so on, and then they give the thus gone one, they give the Buddha a bath, and that kind of comes out of in Hinduism and maybe other traditions, and again, so any one of you may know more about this than I do, but isn't that part of the weekly ritual that the Hindus go through is to be washing the linga and so on like that. It's a constant ceremony that they engage in cleansing, washing, purifying, and so on. So this image of these disciples then washing and making sure that the thus gone one has this purity is something that comes out of a tradition. In other words, they just didn't invent it. It was a tradition that they had. And I think it's interesting to note that the thus gone one was very conscious of past Buddhas. He was reminding himself of past Buddhas, and he was trying to reconstruct or reconsider, those things that were legends or whatever you want to call it that were left by the past Buddhas, that he should be honoring that and he should be performing those same type of ritualistic offerings or homages, sitting in the seats, circumambulating the 1,000 seats and so on like that.
Pema Dorje, I wanted to say something about the bathing. I've been listening to some Dharma teachings on the four powers of confession, and they're talking about the atonement. So these are four different parts of a confession. If you're trying to work with something you've done that you regret, and the third one, atonement, and it has this long list of different things you can do for atonement. It's basically you've done something non-virtuous, now you want to do something virtuous to counterbalance. And the idea that maybe the monk, his ascetic friends who had doubted him and mistreated him when he first arrived, now they're atoning for that by bathing him. And in the tradition the traditional teaching on atonements, some of the atonements are like drawing images of the Buddha, copying Buddhist scriptures, taking care of stupas, like painting them or just keeping at the upkeep of the outside of a stupa. And so that means that idea of taking care of venerating what is holy. And here they are, bathing the Buddha after, doubting him when he first arrived. Thank you.
Do you think that there's a baptism that is something like that?
I did make me think of John the Baptist washing the feet of Jesus. No, but I think that yeah, he did wash his feet. But no, I don't think of it like that, because that's a very Christian idea of bringing in the Holy Spirit, and I don't think that the Buddha would teach that you're bringing something in from outside of yourself rather than bringing something up from within. So, thank you.
Thank you. Interesting thoughts.
Perhaps similar to this day, people bathe in the river Ganges, so perhaps more like that than Christian.
The Kumbh Mela. Every year, they come together, but every 12 years is the Maha Kumbh Mela, when all the sadhus come down from the mountains and so on like that.
Isn't it the case in Islam as well? Don't they like ritually wash people wash their feet or other ways to wash themselves before entering a mosque or different things like that? I don't know that much about it, but sounds like so.
Yeah, you're right. It's called, what the technical term is wudu, and it's a symbolic way to let the God know, like, you're cleansing your body before you go in to basically be with him in prayer. Yeah. So the feet, the hands, and the face.
And the Jews have a ceremony like that too. Okay. So I think the point is the interaction between the thus gone one and the five disciples now who now are becoming the monastics and so on and seeing, this interplay that goes between them.
I have
Okay.
a question actually, if it's all right. I don't want to slow us.
Sure,
But,
please.
what do you all make of one term that stood out to me was immortality? What do you all make of that term that the Buddha used to describe himself as reaching immortality in
Where was it? Where is it in the text here?
oh, I don't know.
I want to make sure that we
Oh, dang. I'm not sure. It stood out to me when listening. Um, Dang. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not sure exactly.
well, I think the immortality is it's like the immortality of the spirit. That energy, you can't destroy energy. And energy transforms, goes through this state of flux of energy into matter, matter into energy. There's this constant state of flux, and whether we should think of it as in terms of there's a fixed amount in this space, that we call space. This phenomenal nature has got this fixed amount of energy or something like that. But but that speaks to me of the concept of immortality, that there's something that can't be destroyed.
Well, my understanding of it is that from the standpoint of Abhidharma, nirvana was considered to be permanent. There's when he says it's immortal, it merely means that he had attained nirvana and nothing more than that. So when it's nirvana, the fact that he had attained nirvana is why they call him immortal.
And that certainly makes sense, I think.
What does immortal mean in the context of nirvana? That kind of gets at my question, to be honest. So, like,
Well,
in the sense of just
immortal
that
just
no
means
coming back.
permanent. Permanent in the sense that once you have it, it cannot be lost.
There's no death.
There's no coming back from it. Once you've attained nirvana, you never lose it.
There's no death. There's no rebirth.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's no rebirth, but yeah, sure. But it doesn't mean that the physical body is immortal or anything else. It's merely
Right.
payment of nirvana, which is immortal. So,
It's of the spirit,
well, whatever.
whatever.
Want to understand it, nirvana is kind of beyond our comprehension.
Right.
But yeah, it was just, at least in the Abhidharma, it was considered to be permanent, and therefore it could not be lost. And that's, in that sense, immortal might not be the best word in English, but it's permanent is what they meant by that.
Okay,
So,
thank you. I think I'm overlaying certain like connotations of immortality that I think isn't intended
yeah.
maybe in the translation.
Well, of course, every second your body is changing while you're alive. So, in that sense, nothing is immortal because the body is a compounded thing. But because nirvana is considered to be uncompounded, it can be permanent. And that's at least the standpoint of Abhidharma. So,
Well, to me, that's the word of flux. We're in a constant state of flux, a constant state of change. Okay. Well, these are interesting things to hold, in our intellectual mind, or questions, and through our practices and so on, these things come up. These are the kind of things that when you're in shamatha meditation, calm abiding meditation, these vipassana, these insights pop up. And then they lead to some kind of an experience, a realization of the profundity of what this is and so on. And we see that the words don't can't explain what that experience is, but yet there's an answer, and it's an answer that can't be expressed.
Hey, if you can hear me well,
Yes, Alex, how are you tonight?
all right. Sorry if there is some background noise. I was just thinking that if one is difficult to accept the idea of like biological or like physical immortality, one may think about like the timelessness of existence. And perhaps Buddha saying that was really, not that it's my opinion, but you may think of it as he was hinting at realizing the illusory nature of time. So like as space, can be relative, so to speak. So time is relative, and like in reality, we exist in this four-dimensional space, at least four-dimensional space, right? So once you realize that the time is not something that, um, how to say it, that's something that kind of something that's real and taking you from one point to another point. In one point you're gone, in the other point you appear, then disappear in that point of time, and then reappear in another point of time. Once you realize that this is kind of like illusion, then there is no death and no real birth. Okay, so you kind so I hope you understand based on what we know from Einstein and all that, time is just another construct that we create in our mind. And from Buddha point of view, he may be beyond time and space. If you want to use some allegorical language like that.
So would it be fair to say that really in this super reality or whatever, it's completely permeable, and that we create these constructs that create these walls and so on that seem to be impenetrable, but in the right state of mind, in the absolute, everything is impenetrable, is penetrable. We permeate all these things. Time is permeated. Physicality is permeated.
In another way to put it is like I think the modern theory of information, for example, saying that information cannot be destroyed, and it's in that sense that like once you achieve enlightenment, once you get realized, there is no way of turning back. So once you enter Maha Nirvana, there is no way to unenter Maha Nirvana. So, I mean, the physical body may be coming and going, but like for the consciousness, there is no death, there is no birth, and there is no death. So in that sense, you will become immortal.
Yeah, and to that point, we talk about that there's a remembering when we are deep in samadhi, there is an element of remembering, that which cannot be expressed. Because we've all been there. We're all there right now. You know, right now we're consumed by our physicality, by our intellectuality and so on. But when we die, when we give that up, when our body drops and the spirit, if we can call it that, is released, then we become that pure wisdom. We become that pure nature. We become that. And we've all been there. That's where we came from before we were born. And that's where we go when we die. Now, that's a very, constructed point of view, the way to express that. But I think it speaks to the point of that there is this that can be remembered.
Yes, like remembered, or yeah, I remembered and like realized. So now that you've seen that you haven't noticed before, and now that you're aware of this, well, then you don't see the point of death, because I mean, just some molecules, move here and there, get rearranged, but like the pure consciousness, it is it's continues in its stream.
And that's what we've said before, months ago and so on. We talked about tuning into a particular radio station as a metaphor, that vibration. And that's how we come to call each other Sangha. It's how we come to call each other brothers and sisters and so on. Something that runs through us all that we recognize, like tuning into that radio station. And once you attain that, it can't be lost. You know it's there. You've experienced it. And you stumble for the words to try and explain it, like we're trying to do right now, but yet it's a shared experience.
Don't we spend time every single day? Almost every human being spends time in a state in which we are kind of pure, I don't know, consciousness, but we're not using our bodies and we're not in control, and that's called sleep, right? And just the way Alex was describing it reminds me of sleep a little bit. I take sleep really seriously because the Dalai Lama said that sleep is the highest form of meditation, and it's important too. I think he said that.
Well, it's an interesting discussion and something we can talk about. And I think that's something to talk about, and along with the dream yoga and the Bardo Total, because both of those have points, to expand that idea. So that's one of the things to hold. Okay. So now for the next group is several pages, and we can either split it up or ask one person to read it, these next 4 or 5 pages. So I'd like to make it just one person reading. So Matthew, would you mind reading? So from 26.28 through 26.58. If you'll read those pages, please.
Okay. Okay. Monks, at that point, the thus gone one's body began to emit light rays that filled this trichilocosm with bright light. This light illuminated the inhabitants of the entire world who were steeped in evil and darkness. The color and brilliance of this light even outshone that of the sun and the moon, those magical planets that are otherwise so highly praised for their great power. The light shone so brightly that it illuminated even places so dark that those beings who are born there cannot see their hands, even if they hold them right in front of their faces. Now even those beings were bathed in light so bright that they immediately saw and acknowledged each other, saying, "Oh my, there are other beings here. There really are." Then the whole trichilocosm began to shake in 6 different ways and exhibited 18 great signs. It began to quiver, tremble, quake, wobble, thunder, and roar, each in the 3 degrees of intensity. The world shook so violently that when the edge was down, the center was up. When the edge was up, the center was down. When the east was down, the west was up. When the west was up, the east was down. When the north was down, the south was up. When the north was up, the south was down. At that point, one could hear all sorts of pleasant and cheerful sounds. There were sounds that inspired love and made everyone serene. There were inviting and refreshing sounds impossible to describe or imitate. Agreeable sounds that do not produce fear. At that moment, there was not a single being anywhere that felt hostile, frightened, or anxious. At that moment, even the light of the sun and moon and the splendor of the gods, such as Sakra, Brahma, and the world protectors, could not be perceived anymore. All beings who were living in the hells, along with those born as animals, and all those in the world of the Lord of Death, became instantaneously free from suffering and filled with every happiness. No being had any emotion, such as hatred, delusion, envy, jealousy, pride, hypocrisy, arrogance, wrath, malice, or burning anguish. At that moment, all sentient beings felt love for each other, wished each other well, and saw each other as parents and children. Then, from within the array of light, these verses rang out. Leaving the heaven of joy, the Lord went to the mother's womb, took birth in the Lumbini grove, and was lifted up by the husband of Sakhi. With the gait of a lion, he took 7 steps, and undistracted spoke with the voice of Brahma. "I am the most excellent in the world." In order to help all beings, he abandoned the 4 continents and took ordination. He practiced austerities and hardships before going to the center of the earth. He conquered Mara and his army. He gained awakening for the sake of the world. He has come to Varanasi and will turn the wheel of Dharma. Brahma and the other gods requested him to turn the wheel of equanimity. Engendering compassion for the world, the sage gave his consent. Keeping his firm promise, he has come to the deer park at Varanasi. There he will turn the wheel that is wondrous, glorious, and unsurpassed. The Lord practiced for 100 billion eons. If you seek the Dharma that he discovered, you should come in a hurry to listen to the Dharma. Rare is the human condition and the arising of a Buddha, and extremely rare it is that someone develops faith. It is rare to find freedom from the 8 unfortunate states, so listening to the Dharma is the most important activity. All these things have been found today. The thus gone one has appeared, and you have your freedom and faith. Hearing the Dharma is the most precious thing for one who renounces all mad carelessness. For the last billion eons, you have never heard the Dharma. This Dharma has been discovered today by one who renounces all mad carelessness. Our guide will turn the wheel of immortality, so come quickly, everyone. This voice now urges all of you gods from the earth up until Brahma to come. Once the great divine voice had called the gods, they at once abandoned their wealth and all appeared by the side of the thus gone one. Monks, in order for the thus gone one to turn the wheel of Dharma at the deer park by the hill of the fallen sages in Varanasi, the earth gods now formed a great circle around the thus gone one. The circle was wonderful and beautiful to the eye. It was enormous, with a circumference of 700 miles, and the gods adorned the sky above it with parasols, victory flags, banners, and canopies. The gods from the desire and form realms then offered to the thus gone one 8,400,000 lion thrones, accompanied by this request: "Please consider us with love and take your seat on the throne." We pray that the Blessed One will then turn the wheel of Dharma. Monks at that time from all directions, east, south, west, and north, above and below, many millions of bodhisattvas who had made previous aspirations for this occasion came forth. They all bowed down at the feet of the thus gone one and requested him to turn the wheel of Dharma. All the powerful gods in this billionfold universe, such as Sakra, Brahma, the world protectors, and the other ones with the title of Great Lord, bowed their heads to the thus gone one's feet. They all requested the thus gone one to turn the wheel of Dharma with these words: May the Blessed One now turn the wheel of Dharma for the benefit of and happiness of many beings, for the love of the world, for the well-being and happiness of great numbers of beings, both gods and humans. Well gone one, please make this offering of Dharma. Lord, please shower the rain of Dharma. Unfold the great victory banner of Dharma. Blow the great conch of the Dharma. Beat the drum of the Dharma. About this it is said, from throughout the triculocosm, Brahma, Sakra, and many guardians appeared, and bowing their heads to the victorious one, they said, Great sage, please remember your earlier promise when previously you said, I am the first and the best. I will end suffering for all beings. Sage, as you sat below the holy tree, you tamed Mara and his minions, and the peace and sacredness of your supreme awakening felled the tree of disturbing emotions. Now that all the intentions that you nurtured for 100 eons have been fulfilled, look upon beings bereft of a protector and turn the supreme wheel. The light of the well-gone one illuminated hundreds of thousands of Buddha realms, bringing many hundreds of sons of the Buddhas through miraculous power who offered the well-gone one vast and manifold offerings, praised the thus gone one's true qualities, and invoked the compassionate one thus. Like a compassionate cloud, a lightning bolt of wisdom, and a wind of insight, for 1,000 eons you have nourished beings with your thunderous voice. Please pacify their thirst with the downpour from the rain cloud of the Eightfold Path. May your powers, faculties, and concentration make the harvest of liberation bountiful. For many thousands of eons, you have trained well and rested in the suchness of emptiness. You dispense the medicine of the Dharma and know the lives of sentient beings. For human beings, tormented by the 100 diseases of disturbing emotions, victorious physician, please turn the supreme wheel of Dharma and liberate beings. For so long you increased the 6 perfections. You performed and amassed an incomparable and immutable wealth of Dharma. As you behold all these beings without protection, wealth, or guidance, noble guide, please share the 7 types of wealth and turn the wheel. Seeking the awakening of the victorious ones, you joyfully relinquished your fortune. Riches, treasures, gold, fine robes, beautiful flowers, ointments, scented powders, finest dwellings, your retinue of consorts, the kingdom, even your beloved son. Perfect Buddha, please turn the supreme wheel. For 100 eons, you have likewise kept your discipline intact and pure, always training in patience and with your diligence never waning. Sage, your concentration is supreme and your insight is a clairvoyant wisdom. With your intent fulfilled, please remove the fever and turn the supreme wheel. Monks, at that point a bodhisattva, a great being, known as the one who turns the wheel when the intent is formed, offered a Dharma wheel to the thus gone one. It was an exquisite wheel adorned with all kinds of jewels, gems, and various other embellishments. It had a hub, a rim, and 1,000 spokes. It was adorned with flower garlands, lattices of gold, tassels with bells, and the motifs of an elephant in rut, a filled vase, and a swastika. The wheel was adorned with various marks of auspiciousness, beautifully wrapped in a divine fabrics and dyed in different colors. It was strewn with flowers of the heavens, adorned with fragrant garlands, and rubbed with perfumed ointments. In this way, it was a wheel as beautiful as can be. It came about through the power of previous aspirations made as the Bodhisattva had trained. It was truly a suitable offering to the thus gone one. Since all the previous thus gone ones in succession had accepted this wheel, it possessed the unbroken blessings of all the Buddhas. In fact, this wheel had previously been turned by all former thus gone ones, worthy ones, perfect Buddhas, and therefore it was now offered to the thus gone one to turn. Once he had made this offering to the thus gone one, the Bodhisattva joined his palms and praised the thus gone one with these verses. When Dipankara made the prediction for the Pure One, he said, "You will become a Buddha, a lion among the lions of men." At that time I made the following aspiration: when I become perfectly enlightened, I will seek the Dharma. Today the best of beings have come here from the 10 directions, so many in number that they cannot be counted. With joined palms, they bow at the thus gone one's feet and request the joy of the Sakya clan to turn the wheel of Dharma. The offerings of the gods at the seat of awakening and the arrays of the sons of the victorious ones, they all stand together, set forth for the wheel of Dharma. The complete array could never be fully described. The heavens above this trichilocosm are filled with gods, and on earth demigods, kinnaras, and humans roam. Yet no sound can be heard at this very moment, as everyone looks with a peaceful mind to the victorious one.
Thank you. Any opening comments about this section? So in the beginning of this section, the thus gone one is radiating this great light. And the trichiliocosm is twisting and turning, what we might call the universe. And there's peace amidst all this twisting and turning. And then through this emanation of light comes all this explanation of stages and steps that happen and so on. And it's realized that there is a freedom from the 8 unfavorable states. If you look at 26.38, the third line, it says, "It is rare to find freedom from the 8 unfortunate states." And that is in the glossary, it's G166. And what it is the 8 unfavorable conditions. When we talk about, in the very beginning, when we talk about what it is to be a precious human being and the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, that we have these leisures, these 8 leisures, and these 10 endowments. Well, the 8 leisures are the leisures from these unfortunate states. Being born in the hell realm, as an animal, being born among the barbarians, etc. Being able to have the proper senses and so on like that. So we're seeing that all the things that we've heard from before, in one way or another, are embedded into this sutra. So then it continues, and then earth gods speak to the Buddha, speak to, surround Gautama and praise Gautama, and the earth gods are requesting the teachings. So then the earth gods, Brahma, Shakya, Sakra, and so on, are all beseeching him, and the thus gone ones are his qualities and everything are being spoken of, and the thus gone one's true qualities. And 673, if you look up in the glossary, 673, you can see what they are and so on. So following this and refreshing our memory of this, refreshing our heart, because as I read this, my heart begins to really swell. I can feel it in my heart center. And then at the top of the page, where it's 26.49, but at the top where it's still 26.48, it says, "May your powers, the 10 powers, may your faculties, the 5 faculties, and your concentration, the absorption, make the harvest of liberation bountiful. So again, it's referring back to these lists of qualities and attainments and so on. And then in 26.50, the six perfections, which is 591 in the glossary. And then in the next stanza, it says, the last line, it says, noble guide, please share the 7 types of wealth and turn the wheel. The 7 types of wealth are the 7 branches of awakening. And we're on the cusp of that awakening. We could do it in this lifetime. If you can develop that one pointed mindfulness, at least for a moment, we can have that cutting through and crossing over. The 8 branches, the 8 types of the 8 branches, the 7 branches of awakening. So that's 572 in the glossary. So this is worth looking at, taking a minute to look at. So it says, 572, it says the set of 7 factors or aspects that characteristically manifest on the path of seeing. The path of seeing is the first bhumi of being a bodhisattva, the purification of a human being to become a Buddha as he or she passes through the 10 levels of the bhumis. The path of seeing. Mindfulness is number 1. Number 2 is discrimination between dharmas. The next one is diligence. The one after that is joy. The one after that is mental and physical ease. And the 6th one is meditative absorption, samadhi. And the last one, 7, is equanimity. So these, again, are the 7 types of wealth that are the 7 branches of awakening. To be rich in joy, to be rich in equanimity, to be rich in discrimination between dharma. And what does it mean to be rich in these things? It is to be the embodiment of these things, to be radiating these things. And these things don't come from a simple reading. They come from an experience. They come from a meditation. They come from study over and over again and having the intention for this first, to have the intention.
Lance, could you talk a little bit about equanimity and samadhi, because they come together in my mind, and then I find that I'm not distinguishing between them.
We can think of it in many ways, but the first simplest way is to think, well, we have a physical body, we have an intellectual body, we have a spiritual body, and we all do. And that because of that, there's an equanimity of sameness between us all to be able to recognize that and to appreciate that, to honor that, to trust in that, and so on, is that equanimity between our physicality, through our intellectualism, and through our spirituality, to be able to recognize that, and so on. In the spirit, or rather, in the physical, we can look at it that, we're made up of stardust, right? Wasn't that something that Carl Sagan said or Einstein said? We're all made up of the same material. And so there's that equanimity in our physicality. There's that equanimity in our thoughts and so on. The things that that human beings think about, survival, love, all these different things, is all the same. It doesn't matter who we are, what nation we live in, what race we are, or anything like that. And in the spirituality, the more that we explore the spirituality of Buddhism, the more we recognize the spirituality of Christian. The more we recognize the Christian, the Jewish, or the Hindu, or the Islam, or whatever. We see that the essence of what that spirituality is shared by all these people. And why? Because we've created that. It's come from human beings. Human beings devise this. And we have this gift of being a human being to recognize this, but also to recognize that it leads us someplace, to some time, to some phenomenal point, some seminal point where it all becomes the same thing. It all becomes the essence of what all this is, the true nature. So whether we explain it as nirvana or parinirvana or whatever, some word that tries to be a mnemonic to say what that is, but it's an experience. So the samadhi is the holding of that, is the holding of the equanimity. Within the samadhi's many things, or it's very simple, but there's teachings where we're going to talk about that, and so among those things is that equanimity of all things. Samadhi is the equanimity of all phenomenal nature, the revealed equality of all phenomenal nature, including the mind. So it's a big thing that we all share, and it comes from these 7, how do you say it? The 7 types of wealth, the 7 branches of awakening. That when we have the meditation, when we have the diligence, and we have the absorption and the mental and physical ease, in other words, not chasing things and holding on to things, we find that balance in samadhi. So I hope that explains it. That's how I think about it. That's how I've experienced it.
Can I add something to that?
Certainly.
So I think of equanimity as just an ability to maintain a sense of control, I guess I would say, and not be overwhelmed by life, like emotions like such as joy and fear or anger. The ability to experience the emotions but without being overwhelmed by them, to be able to experience the emotions and just consciously act in skillful ways to respond to those emotions, not be overwhelmed and to a point where you don't have any control over how you're reacting to things. So I think of that equanimity as a sort of a place of calmness, or a place of understanding. So even if you're in extreme grief or extreme hatred or extreme joy, you still don't lose the ability to act in a way that would be considered skillful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kagyu, you always have such a beautiful way of highlighting some practicalities of just your observations are always very helpful. Thank you for that note.
Sure. Yeah, I'm very practical.
So this next group that comes after that 7 types of wealth is talking about the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections. And then it comes down to 26.53, and it's talking about this bodhisattva. This bodhisattva appears. And He's known, his name is one who turns the wheel when the intent is formed. So just a few minutes ago, I said this all starts with the intention, having the right intention, having the right motivation to do this. And so here is the Bodhisattva, known as the one who turns the wheel when the intent is formed. What's going to make the biggest difference in your life is going to be what you intend to do with the rest of it. So he's asking questions and so on, and more, he's describing the Dharma wheel, and saying, this is what it is. This is what I need to do as the Bodhisattva. This is what the Dusk Gone One has accomplished, and so on. And he's pointing this out, and so on. And why is the wheel? He's pointing it out as a Dharma wheel. Why is the wheel so important? As an image. Because there's a circular pattern to it. There's a coming and a going and so on like that. But it's a never-ending circle. It doesn't end. It doesn't begin. It's just one motion. It's one vibration. It's one undulation that we are part of, and so on. And then we can look at it that through our own body, there are these wheels. We call them the chakras: the crown chakra, the ajna chakra, the throat chakra, the heart chakra, etc. All these different chakras. And then in the Buddhism, in the practice, in the Tantra, is the binding of those wheels, the coming together of those wheels, and recognizing or realizing those wheels all as one, or as, it's a conceptual thing. But realizing it, and that's the beauty of being a human being again. That we have this life in order to be able to bind the wheels so that we become inseparable from those wheels, and that therefore we become, as part of that inseparability of what we call the absolute or the ultimate or something, the Dusk Gone One. So then what follows after that, 26.56, and the next few verses are the praise of having recognized that and accomplished that. Any other thoughts, comments?
I just want to throw in this idea on equanimity, maybe to clarify the emotional equanimity. I mean, even...
Can you speak up a little bit, because it's hard to hear?
Yeah, like it may... one can think of things such like beauty and ugliness, right? And to me, equanimity meaning take whatever is beautiful and take whatever is looking ugly in the same spirit. Basically recognizing that whatever appears is our own construction of our mind. So the nature of everything is basically the same. So we shouldn't be invested in our thoughts or emotions in whatever we focus our mind on. So samadhi is basically calming down and focusing the mind, right? So when we do that and we point that mind to a person or a thing or a phenomena, we should that like to do this in a spirit that it doesn't have inherent existence. It's not good or bad on its own. We're just trying to understand it better. And that's how perhaps we should approach like humans or you know objects or whatever like phenomena that we see happening. So maybe that helps to whoever like tries to get more inside what the equanimity is about. I think it's what I'm just saying is just probably like beyond emotion. It's also like internal attitude towards that. I mean, you don't want to feel curious. You don't want to feel uninterested. You know, it's more than just pure human emotion, I guess.
Thank you. So I think we should continue our discussion. So dig into what we talked. We got about 20 minutes left of the hour here, and it's not enough time to start the next recitation and have a conversation about that. So I'd rather, try and dig out a few more things with this and ask you, what does this mean to you? What do you think of this? Is it the first time that you're hearing this? Is it the first time you've read this, or have you read it before? Have you prepared yourself for this meeting and had read this, and so maybe it's the second time you're hearing this or the third time you're hearing it? How different has it been with each pass of your reading it, studying, and thinking about it? Anybody have any comments?
George, I wanted to say something else about the seven factors of awakening. Just something when I was reading it. I was
Please.
wondering, I was thinking about these things as one leading into the next.
Okay.
Like the development of mindfulness leads to development of discrimination between dharmas. The development of discrimination between dharmas leads to diligence. Diligence leads to joy. Joy leads to mental and physical ease. Mental and physical ease leads to meditative absorption. And meditative absorption leads to developing equanimity. Sort of like the chain of dependent origination, where one kind of builds on the next. And I just was interested in what you and Bernie thought about that idea. Thank you.
Bernie, what do you think? Bernie, did you want to answer that? Your microphone is muted.
Falling asleep. I didn't hear the answer. I was in dreamland. Actually, I don't know. So if you could repeat what he said, I would. If it's not too long, I can comment on it.
Well, Gunga, can you
Yeah.
concisely give him a?
So I was thinking that the seven factors of awakening, I was thinking about them in the same way you might think of the chain of dependent origination, with mindfulness leading to the development of discrimination, which leads to the development of dharmas. Discriminating between dharmas will lead to development of diligence, lead to joy, leads to mental and physical ease, leads to meditative absorption, leads to equanimity. So each thing sort of building on
Um,
each other, almost
that's
like you would build
that's an
a.
interesting idea. Generally, how these things are presented, though, is that there are 37 factors of enlightenment, and they represent different stages of enlightenment. So I would say that you were wrong, it actually makes quite a lot of sense the way you discuss it. But I don't recall it ever being said in any text that I've ever written. But it makes sense. But I can't say, oh, this is what, that's definitely so, because I kind of try to base what I say on what's in the commentaries. So yeah, it's a sensible idea, but it could be, that they all come together and not necessarily in that order. It's sort of a cycle, you get a little better at one thing and it makes the other thing better, and it feeds back on itself. So you can't say that it's going to necessarily go one way or the other. And there's a passage in the what they call it, the single intention of Gongchik, that sometimes people get these abilities out of order. You would think that they would come in order, but sometimes they go in the reverse order that people normally think about it. So life is complicated, and what you say makes sense, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's the way it's going to happen to everyone,
I
in
think of
my
it,
opinion.
thank you. I think of it in terms of a tree. I mean, it's being regarded as the branches. So the commonality is the trunk of the tree that has 7 branches. And the branches are like the radiation, if you will, the radiance of that trunk. And that they don't, so it's like the eminence of it, or the emanation of it, reaching to the sky with its fruits and its flowers and so on, like that. And that, can you have awakening? The tree, the trunk is the awakening, So there's the radiance of the meditation, the radiance of the joy, the radiance of the diligence, and of the mental and physical ease and so on, like that. So I look at it as a tree, and the trunk is the awakening itself, and this is the celebration of that. That these things lead to that. They celebrate that. So that's, you know, is it a cause and effect? You know, and is it in a circular pattern or something like that? Well, I guess you can look at it from that point of view too. And it, any of these intellectualizations are all valid. None of it's wrong. It's just another way of looking at the same thing, and coming up with a different concept. And that's what we do as human beings. So to celebrate that. Anybody else have a thought about it? How would you celebrate awakening? What leads to awakening? How would you celebrate awakening? What degrees of awakening have you had? I'm sure you've had some. You wouldn't be here tonight if you didn't have some.
I I think we can remember some of those moments that maybe not easy to put in words, but just reflecting on the verses that we were reading, it kind of struck to me that the whole world was shaking, and not just shaken, but to a very extreme shaking, and in all different modes and directions and intensity, and yet nobody was feeling frightened. So that was that was striking to me to read in these verses, that it was, on the other hand, it was like, and I think I'm trying to think what is that meaning of vibration in the world. And the only thing I can come up with is that of a change. So vibration in itself like means things is like changing internally, right? Going from one state of whatever being or location to another place of being or location, back and forth, and perhaps this was showing like the meaning of that is that everything can change. So any beings in any world, they have capacity for change. And with light penetrating the whole world, that was sort of showing as self-evidence to every sentient being that yes, we are here, whatever we are, we can have happiness, and we can have capacity to change, to go from lower state into the higher state, or more refined state. And for a few seconds, I guess everyone could realize and see that while there was light, while was that divine presence, so to speak. These are just thoughts that come into my mind about.
Thank you. How would you define light? Is light a physical thing? And does it have a metaphor, an analogy in the intellectual, and another metaphor in the spiritual? As we think of light, as we experience light, it's in the physical, and is it not a concentration of energy? That if you can concentrate energy into a finite space, light will erupt. Is that the seminal point? When we talk about in the practices we do, from a seminal point of light comes this phenomenal nature. And out of this phenomenal nature, we come to life. Does that imply that before that there's just darkness? So is it a metaphor in the intellectual way that there's darkness before there's light? And darkness means ignorance and the emotions, etc. And the light means wisdom. Kunga.
I don't know if you're asking me to
I'm asking
elaborate.
anybody. Kunga turned on his microphone. So what do you got?
Well, I guess you could say we can only have light because of the ignorance. If we're saying ignorance is darkness, no, it's meaningless to have light without ignorance. Otherwise, there's just light. There's no ignorance. There's nothing to compare it to. It only exists in the contrast, I guess. That would argue that's why our human lives are meaningful, because we have these relative things to work against. And if it was all the same and there was no suffering, it was just all nirvana, it'd just be, what would that be? That would just be, there'd be no change, there would be no impermanence. There'd be so many of the things that we take as truths of our reality. The other thing I thought about with light, the most interesting thing to me about light is it can be measured in different ways. It can act like waves or it can act like particles, I think is the idea. And it depends on your perspective. And I think that's such a nice metaphor for us as human beings and our perceptions of reality. And depending on what our history, our background is, we perceive reality in radically different ways. And it really just constantly being reminded that your lens, your lens is what's really important. What lens are you using to look at reality? It's very difficult to have a lens that's not um, slanted or fogged in some way. I guess and I think of that our awakening is just an understanding of the lens to the point where that even though you have a lens, it doesn't inhibit your view. Like you understand the imperfections of your lens, so you're able to see reality clearly. Thank you.
Isn't it awareness?
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I was mean. That's what I would say awareness is, right?
Bernie, you
Yeah,
turned
that was
on your mic. Did you have something?
Not really much to say. The obvious thing is light is often a metaphor. Sometimes it's literal. But generally, when you see light talked about, it's used metaphorically, going from ignorance to wisdom. So, which is pretty straightforward. That's not much of contribution. So,
Gary, did you have a point you wanted to make? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all very much for the very interesting conversations, and I hope this is helpful. So next week we'll continue on, and so we're about 20% of the way through the sutra in terms of the number of verses. So we'll do the dedication. So we'll go to our prayer book and to the dedication by Lord Jigten Sumgun. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of Yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shavaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. See you all
Come
soon.
back next Monday.